I think we're going to start to see some more really, really cool games, kind of AAA level titles. And I think most growth teams are going to crack the code, or at least start to crack the code on this kind of existential crisis we talked about. What are some of the delightful experiences, like you mentioned, Blake, that actually let us mint active users into active addresses? I think those are things I'm really excited about.
Welcome to W3G, the official podcast for Myosin.xyz and your go-to hub to learn about the latest developments in growth and marketing in the wild and wonderful world of Web3. Tune in each week as your hosts Julie Octaviano and Blake Minho Kim talk to the best and brightest and keep uncovering insights so we can all grow together in the world of Web3.
Today we'll be speaking with Quinn Campbell, VP of Growth at Sky Mavis, the company behind Axie Infinity, one of the OG play-to-earn games in Web3.
Quinn is a growth expert with deep experience in the Asian gaming market and plenty of insights on the future of gaming and just what it will take to get us to a more community-driven and Web3 native future.
We're excited to share our conversation about all things Web3 gaming, including the 4 growth pillars of Axie, the evolution of guilds, and the rise of Ronin as a leading blockchain for Web3 gaming.
We had a great combo with some brief discussions about Myosin and our origin story, as well as a fun jam sesh on the state of the Web3 growth stack and gaming communities.
So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's episode number 10 with Quinn Campbell.
Thanks so much for joining us on the pod, Quinn. We're super bullish on Web3 gaming. Really excited to chat with someone who's been deep in the weeds. And we always love to start with a quick origin story. So we'd love to get things started with you telling us a bit about yourself, how you found your way into Web3, and all the awesome work that you've been doing with Sky Mavis and Axie.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So before coming over to Sky Mavis, I was actually working in like traditional mobile games publishing for a really big French mobile games publisher called Voodoo. And, you know, I it's like a really fun job getting to do kind of publishing. You know, I was covering like 60 studios at the time, mostly in China. And, you know, every one of them, it was their dream to launch a game. And most of them, you know, were like 22-year-old kids in their mom's basement. And, you know, for like even a story, right? One of the studios I was covering, there's a solo dev in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. This 26-year-old kid, he'd just gotten married and just had a baby. And I was able to like launch and ship his first ever game. And, you know, he made, you know, probably like $800,000 off of that. And he like still sends me pictures of like the nursery that he's building for his baby and like the
Absolutely
nice car.
wild.
Like it's so cool to get to be a part of, you know, something so impactful. But the flip side of it is like a year or so into my time there, I just started taking a closer look at all of the publishing contracts that we were putting all these studios under, right? Because as a publisher, we don't actually make any games. We just find all these studios and then we launch their games. And man, they were like almost predatory. Like every game that we launched under standard contract, we would take 80% of the revenue. And the game dev who ideated, built, shipped, and owned their game was taking 20% of the revenue off their game. And it just didn't sit right with me. And the more that I kind of sat up and looked around, I realized it wasn't anything wrong with the publisher I was working at. This is just the system. This is just how kind of Web2 games distribution works. And I knew there had to be something better out there. And it was right around that time I came across NFT gaming. I came across Axie Infinity, and I just saw this idea of like direct to community distribution, and it clicked with me, right? And I saw how like so much of this previously co-opted value was now unlocked and being used in these really cool new ways. And I knew I had to be a part of it. And so that was kind of my path in, to be honest.
Amazing. Were you already playing around with stuff in Web3 and crypto before that? Or was that kind of the route? Or
I had been in and out. But had always gotten out at the bear market. Was one of those guys for the longest time.
Yeah.
As we do. I'm proud to say I'm riding this one all the way through.
There we go.
And then was getting into the NFT craze kind of right around that time anyways. And then obviously went all in as I kind of got turned on to Axie.
Nice. Speaking of Axie, just jumping in there, I'm sure many of our listeners are aware of Axie Infinity, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page who is listening, who may be new to the space or new to gaming, would love to hear your personal take on what Axie Infinity is, how the ecosystem has developed since the initial launch, I think in 2018, and then just the kind of crazy journey of ups and downs it's been ever since then.
Definitely. It has been a crazy journey. So Axie Infinity is, it's really this universe that it's this kind of ever expanding universe filled with these like really cute, adorable, but fierce creatures that we call Axies. I've actually got one like right here. It's kind of like a cool little hat. That the
Heyo.
community made me. Yeah, I love this thing. And so all of these Axies, you can almost think of them like Pokemon, right? So, they can be battled and bred, and they really are like your digital pets. But the really big innovative thing that we brought to this was that each and every one of them is tokenized, right? So you can actually own your Axie in a way that you could never really do that in Pokemon before. And so I think that was like a major unlock for really NFT gaming and obviously for Sky Mavis as well. But now we've kind of grown so far beyond that. Right. So when we started building Axie in like 2018, and no infrastructure existed for Web3 gaming. Very little infrastructure even existed for Web3. And so the byproduct of that was that Sky Mavis had to actually build all of the infrastructure that it needed itself. Right. Whereas like a game studio, all a game studio really wants to do is build and ship games. And that's awesome. Right. That's what game studios should be doing. We were forced to become a Web3 tech company, a Web3 infrastructure company on top of being a game studio. And it's a lot, but it put us in this really awesome position now where, we have Axie, but on top of that, we also have a number of third-party games built on our Ronin blockchain as well, which I think should be a recent announcement by the time these come out. But, it's because of the fact that we had to build our own blockchain network, right? We had to build all this infrastructure. So we're in this position to now reinvent what publishing is in Web3 gaming. And so we're now becoming this kind of Web3 games publisher idea where we're bringing now new third-party games to the market as well.
What is the difference between Sky Mavis and Axie? How does it sit? Is Axie the ecosystem and Sky Mavis is one of the games? Or I just want to understand that a little better.
Yeah, so Axie Infinity is the game, or that is like our flagship first-party game. Sky Mavis, we are the developer of Axie Infinity. But we also developed Ronin Blockchain, which is the blockchain that Axie is built on. And so now, we believe it is the kind of preeminent gaming only blockchain. And so we're now deploying other third-party games on our own blockchain. Yeah.
And so Axie Infinity isn't a Web3 native gaming ecosystem. It's just a gaming ecosystem. But then Sky Mavis was the one that brought in the blockchain, the Web3 tech element to it.
So Axie is Web3 native. Axie was our first game that we built. And so because we're Web3, we built it Web3 natively. Interestingly, Axie actually predates Sky Mavis. So we started building Axie.
That's what I was thinking. That's why I was like, wait, I'm trying to piece the puzzle. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So, at the highest level, you got Axie Infinity, you have Sky Mavis, and you have Ronin Network. Axie Infinity is the game that Sky Mavis developed, and then we also developed Ronin Network, which is the network, the blockchain that Axie is built on. Now there will also be third-party games built on Ronin as well.
Nice.
So,
all right, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, no problem.
It's important. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, actually, Quinn, I'd love to kind of dig a little bit deeper, right? I think in terms of the journey of Axie, there's obviously a lot of stuff that happened over the past couple of years. We don't have to go too deep into it, but I think the economics of the game, and I think with some of the stuff happening with Ronin last year, I'm sure 2022 was a crazy time, right? So we'll love to hear from your perspective, particularly, as we are focused on talking about growth and marketing, right? What was last year like, I guess? What does growth look like from your perspective, right? As we just talked about, it's a complex ecosystem between Axie, Ronin, the other games you're developing. What was last year like? And I guess then the next thing is kind of like, what have you learned and what are you carrying forward into this year as you guys keep growing and evolving?
Last year was definitely a crazy year. There was all kinds of stuff going on, right? But I think we built so much resilience through it, and came out incredibly stronger. We're still standing, and we're in an even better position than we were before. But what I think is so exciting is looking forward to this kind of next year, right? The rest of 2023 and 2024. The growth machine is starting to whir up in cool new ways because we now have these new games built on Ronin, right? So traditionally, like the growth framework that we've used at Axie, the way we think about it is there's really kind of 4 pillars to it. It's community, content creators, partnerships, and user acquisition, like traditional performance marketing, which has always been a huge pillar for gaming in Web 2 and in Web 3. So community-led growth it's what everybody talks about in Web 3. It's been so critical for us as well. We're no different, right? And we've got this kind of internal community-led growth process. It's this framework that we built up really, it's everything that worked so well for Axie. The whole goal is building this kind of community-led growth flywheel. And a lot of it is really about finding your core, right? I think I tend to see NFT projects missing this sometimes. A lot of them nail it. A lot of them nail it kind of by happenstance, and some of them just kind of miss it. But what's so critical when you're starting a new Web3 project, especially an NFT project, is to really nail your core users, right? The way we think about it in kind of Web 2, people always say when you launch a new product, your goal is to find your first 1 million paying customers. In Web3, it really is about onboarding that first X thousand co-owners of your network. And it's so critical that they truly are your co-owners, right? They're holding your NFT, they're holding whatever tokens you issue, right? And when Axie was first growing, Jiho did so much white glove work onboarding the core of who our Axie community is. And those are now our biggest whales and our biggest evangelists. And so, that's kind of the most critical thing that we look at when we look at community-led growth. We've got a lot of referral programs and had a lot of success with things like that as well. We launched something called Lunasian Codes, which I think was the first ever fully on-chain referral program. And it still runs today. So I'm proud of that. But that's kind of the first pillar of our framework. Content creators is super critical. We all know this. It was big in gaming in Web 2. It's even bigger in Web 3. We shipped the Axie Creator Program maybe like a year ago now. And that was a hell of an adventure just getting that out. But we now have over 2,500 creators in our creator program. So I'm convinced it's the biggest, our CRM, I'm convinced it's the single biggest CRM of Web3 only content creators in existence, which wasn't our goal setting out to it. But I'm so proud of the way that worked out. Partnerships has been a really interesting kind of vertical for us. Originally, we used to call partnerships it was really anything with guilds, right? It was ecosystem projects. And I think that's what's so cool about building a protocol in Web3 is someone can then build on top of you. It's composable in this really interesting way. The guild ecosystem has shifted a lot in Web3 gaming. You know, when play to earn was really the buzzword, that's when guilds were kind of booming. So I think we're almost figuring out again what partnership growth really means. But we're doing a lot of experiments to nail that one.
How have you? I'd love to double click on that because obviously I think guilds were definitely a huge part of the narrative back in kind of 2021 when all this was blowing up. I remember hearing all about it. People starting to rent, Axies to each other, and the craziness of all that. And some things worked, some things didn't. But how do you see that evolving? Right? Like, what has the next evolution of guilds been? How has it become more sustainable, I guess, in the longer term?
So guilds have gone in a lot of different directions. It's been really interesting to watch. The ones who have stuck around, all of the ones who stuck around have shifted away from this purely extractive play to earn model. Right? We found out that didn't quite work. So we've seen them shift. Some of them are now moving into like being SaaS and infrastructure providers. And actually a lot of our like biggest kind of community tooling and our closest SaaS partners were previously guilds. And so that's been so cool to see, right? Like they know the industry already. They don't even have to sell us. It's like, hell yeah, let's go, let's build together. We just had a really awesome esports tournament that was run by, previously a really, really large guild. So not quite SaaS, but same kind of partnerships, right? We've seen guilds shift into being like esports specific, like they build esports teams, right? And some of the strongest esports teams in our org are previous guilds. We've also seen one go in a lifestyle direction, right? Kind of like the 100 Thieves kind of route. And that's really cool to see as well. They've got like a badass clothing brand and a lot of kind of followers within Axie. So we're seeing the existing guilds move in a lot of different directions. I think they're still finding their footing around what really works. But it's fun to watch. What I'm really curious about is I think guilds are in a unique position to almost build like the next iteration of a Web3 growth agency. What I mean by that is this, right? We've always had this idea of like community as a service. I think a lot of guilds love to think about that. We know that when we onboard a new community member in a Web3 game, there's almost 2 aha moments they need to get to. There's a product aha, and that's classic, right? Like Facebook's example, 8 friends in 24 hours, right? We know what our product aha moment is in Origins. We need to get our user there as quickly as possible. There's also a community aha. We don't know what it is. There's no community analytics tooling that's going to tell us what it is yet, but I think it's soon. I see this future where our community can help new users reach this community aha. And so a guild who turns themselves into a growth agency could essentially go to a game and say, hey, we're going to run your growth for you. We'll have a bolt-on community. When a new user joins, our bolt-on community will be, actioning towards getting this user towards community aha. I think that's step one. There's a really wacky step two, I think, where if you could actually open source funding for performance marketing. Like, let's say, hey, community, I want to run a $20,000 ad campaign in the US. So we're going to target these users. You, if you want to, can invest in it. So anybody in Axie could put X number of AXS in to invest in this campaign. We'll treat it essentially like staking. Come lock this up. I'll use these funds to run an ad campaign on whatever ad networks. We'll acquire the users. All spend that they come, X% will go back to the staking dashboard. Right. Ooh. So everybody who helped pay for the ad, it's like a distributed funding mechanism for performance marketing. But when we do that, I can also tell them, hey, for every new user that we get, as soon as they join and they join the Discord, we're going to have a bot go off saying, hey, user you helped buy, just join the Discord. And you know that we need to make sure they do X, Y, and Z because that's what a sticky user does. Join this, help them onboard and help them download whatever it is. They're now super aligned with helping us make sure that community, that new member hits the community aha. And I think guilds with their bolt-on community as service can help kind of push this as well. That's
a wild idea and I love it.
Yeah.
I might have to steal that. We might have to talk about that after. There's a lot of opportunity there. That's also really interesting when you're talking about with guilds, right? Because I think it speaks to the natural evolution in the space where I think a lot of people came into the space. We're all figuring out as we go, inevitably, particularly within Web3. And a lot of people met, a lot of people came together. And it sounds like as things develop, everyone's kind of fractionalizing and specializing in different elements of the stack. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess. It's the communities.
No, I like that though, Blake. That's really interesting.
Yeah, verticalizing.
They are, And we're seeing it within like this new Web3 growth tech explosion as well, right? I'm sure you guys have been following it closely, right? I mean, the last I checked, there were like 170 something projects in the space. It's wild to see. Are you guys starting to? You guys are building a project as well, right?
We're building a couple different things.
What are you building?
Don't want to give too much away, but we're building a couple different things.
No alpha.
Yeah. I mean, I can keep it high level. I think for us, the idea is always thinking about the different elements of the growth stack, right? So I think a lot of people are building on the protocol layer. And so for us, it's really about how do we bridge and bring more Web2 players into the space and more mainstream customers. So most of the products we're building are focused on creating more delightful experiences. So there's something
specifically around onboarding
funnel.
Or just an experience that draws more users in?
Both. So the way we think about it is Myosin, we are a service DAO, but we also have a product studio. And the benefits of running our service DAO is, we have a community of top-notch marketers, builders, community managers, content creators, strategists, et cetera. And then using our client relationships and the services we're delivering to inform what do we need to go and build, right? So I think two of the products that we have that are pretty public and they're going to be on our website within the next month or so. There's one called Blackbeard. So it's a top of funnel awareness kind of tool. So it's IRL NFT scavenger hunts. So the whole premise here is that for any brand, experiential marketing is a huge thing, particularly as Web3 projects get bigger, right? So Pudgy is getting larger and, Bored Ape is getting larger and Doodles is getting larger. And they're all trying to bring more mainstream folks into the space. The whole idea is actually, can we create an experience where whether or not you already have a wallet, it's as simple as scanning a QR code. You pop up into Google Maps. You can walk around the event, try and claim your first NFT. You don't have a wallet? Easy. Just type in your email. You have your first wallet. You can claim your first NFT. And then from there, there's a world of opportunity you can unlock, right? Because now you can start to, integrate rewards, loyalty, other experiences. You can connect it to other dApps. Right. So it's really that initial, like you said, what's that first product unlock? It's getting them their first wallet and getting them their first NFT in that wallet. And then you can create everything from there. So that's one of the things we're building out. That's probably the first along. We're talking to some folks about it. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, GPT and AI, right? So obviously with GPT-4 and what's coming out there, that's going to transform engagement. So, and we could have a conversation about this offline at some point, but we have another bot that we call Milo, which is really interesting. And Milo is very much focused around, it's an AI-powered chatbot. That's really what it is, but it's built specifically for gaming communities and other types of communities where you can actually start to, it's smarter than your typical Discord bot because now what you can do is actually start to create lore-based personalities. You can token gate off of it. You can create more DAUs because you can say, hey, well, if you engage with this bot, you come in and say GM in the morning, or you actually start to interact with it. right? You can start to give the users either in-game tokens, real ERC20s, whatever you want to program into it. You can now start to actually create a game within the game, right? Because I think the dilemma a lot of Web3 games oftentimes encounter is also developing the game itself takes a long period of time, right? So what do you do in that like 6 months where you have a game coming, but you need to keep people excited and engaged in the meantime,
cool.
right? So that's some of the other stuff we're thinking about. And then there's a much bigger idea that we're also playing around with, which is more like future paid media and ad tech. But that's still incubating.
Web3 ad tech?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't want to go too deep into it right now.
Fair enough. Extremely interesting then.
A lot of fun stuff.
And I really like both those ideas you just outlined. What the second one specifically around that gap, right? Mm-hmm. Jiho, our chief growth officer, always talks about how, in his perspective, our community is one of our products.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's kind of the idea you're bringing there. And a lot of NFT projects or new games, et cetera, who have this gap, it's exactly that. It's like, how do you make community a product to at least fill the time between the two, and preferably to kind of stand alone, right, on its own.
It all has to tie together. It's a universe, right? So if we're going to create this universe, every part should be engaging, including, the Discord or the day-to-day, even when you're not playing the game, right? How's it all tie together?
Yeah.
So fun stuff.
Yeah. And Blake, on that first project you mentioned, I think you said it was called Blackbeard. Really cool, because I think you're essentially kind of creating new active addresses out of that, right? You're giving wallets. Now, is that something, would you guys be owning those active addresses, or would it essentially be for the clients who are using that?
It's two things, right? So we're still exploring. I think we can talk about it offline, but the main goal is it will at first be non-custodial wallets, but if you want to make it custodial and you want to take it offline, you can. But at the end of the day, on our end, we have the ability to map together wallet addresses, email addresses, IP, geolocation, all that comes together. And then for us, the whole point of the Myosin product suite is all these tools we just talked about, the Blackbeard, Milo, and then the ad tech stuff we're thinking about right now, all that stuff, even though they're separate products today, as each of these things grow and they monetize and they scale, it's all an ecosystem. It all ties together. And so you use one of these things, each of these things connects. So there's a lot of possibility of what we can do. Yeah.
It's super cool. It's a flywheel. One thing I've been kind of obsessed with lately, right? So I come from mobile free to play. So ads is not something that Web3 is even thinking about yet. There are some nascent Web3 ad networks. A couple of them I'm very, very bullish on.
We're talking about a couple
I spend
of them.
A lot of time. I spend a lot of time speaking with growth leads in Web3 growth leads at other teams, and everyone's starving for active addresses, right? I kind of like to think like they're users in Web2, they're users in Web3, but I almost think it's fun to talk about an active user, and that means Web2, and an active address, and that means Web3. Everyone's in Web3 starving for active addresses, and we're willing to pay a lot for them. The truth is there just aren't that many, right? So we're kind of all going after the same pool. Whereas I think there's a huge opportunity to be this group that becomes the faucet of active addresses, the one who's actually minting people on. And what's interesting is when you do that, and I'm getting that you guys kind of get this, right? You can actually go after and it's an RBOB. There's an arbitrage play here where you can acquire an active user, someone in Web2. You can do the hard work, which maybe it's not that hard, of minting them into an active address, and then plug in with some of these Web3 ad networks. There's a lot of demand, but not a lot of supply, and start reselling these users these active addresses now for much more than you paid.
That's our viewpoint of Myosin has always been, if you zoom out and you really look at the state of the world, right? A lot of people within Web3, they were kind of, let's be clear, Web3 is probably less than 0.5, 0.1% of the world right now. It's minuscule. Right. And so for us, I'm always thinking about how do we build for the biggest possible audience? How do we make the biggest possible impact? And to do that, we need to be onboarding all the other people into the space. So that's the cool part about the service DAO is we work with clients on all sides. Web3 clients, we're trying to work with more Web2 brands. We already work with a couple, but there's always room for more. Right. And the goal is, like you said, net new addresses, start to bring those people in space, because everyone's building the pipes. But what I always say is, where's the water, right? The water all sits over here. So someone's got to go and do the hard work of connecting these two worlds.
Fill the pipes afterwards. Yeah.
Bring the pipes, bring the water through the pipes so everyone in Web3 can, have a good time, and then vice versa. Yeah.
I think it's the biggest existential crisis in Web3 that we're all kind of facing together. But I mean, Blake and Julia, I don't mean to like hijack, but I'd love to ask you guys one more question.
You're fine. Yeah, of course, go
That's
for
all
it.
Right. So
Two-way conversation.
Absolutely. So like having built this service DAO, having built Myosin, and kind of using it like also as your go-to-market mechanism in a sense, is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
you're doing kind of B2B community building. Am I right there?
Yeah, it's B2B to C, I guess is the best way to put it, right? Because
Yeah. What is I like? Yeah, let's just double click on that for a second. I've just been turned on to this idea of B2B community building in Web3.
Yeah.
Right. For like the longest time, Web3, it's been all about community, but it's been 100% B2C community building. And then I started really getting close with Justin, who built Safari, this kind of Web3 growth community. And I'm so impressed by what he's built. And he really turned me on to like the magic of B2B community building and and using it as a sales effort and like using it as go-to-market. And it blew my mind. And, I think it's brand new. And I think we're going to start to see it a lot more. But like, what has your experience been like doing B2B community building? And why did you pick this route? And what have the learnings been like? Like anything that comes to mind would be cool to hear.
Do you mean in the sense that like we're building Myosin or that we're building communities for other clients or both? Or which
building community, building the Myosin community?
Yeah. The origin story really comes from the fact that, so my background has been very much in early stage tech and venture. Been building in early stage startups in New York for a long time. One of our co-founders, Simon, we met because he's been doing growth marketing his whole career. And so we brought him on to do growth marketing for one of the startups I was building at a venture studio called Human Ventures like 4 or 5 years ago. Kept in touch. He reached back out to me about it a little over a year ago. And he said, Blake, I'm starting this growth marketing DAO. Do you want to build this with me? And I was particularly excited because I think, and this is a broader take on Web3 and DAOs in general, is, when Simon and I actually first met, it was around 2017, 2018. We actually had our own blockchain lab too. And it's crazy stuff. I remember that's when I first got into it. It's because someone told me about smart contracts. I was like, wow, this ETH thing is really cool. Bought some on Coinbase, of course, wrote it up, wrote it down. But when DeFi summer happened, NFTs happened, DAOs happened, COVID and onwards, I could see that there was definitely momentum. This stuff is definitely taking off. This is the moment. But at the same time, with DAOs, I felt like as someone who's been building in early stage tech my whole career, I felt like we were just seeing the same mistakes, which is you see a new technology, a new shiny object, and people always get so caught up with it that they're just like, there were all these tweets. I don't know if you remember like a year ago, right? Where everyone's like, oh, is it really a DAO if it's not decentralized and autonomous? and I was like, guys, listen, like building any type of company, it's still people, right? A DAO is people, a DAO is a community. And so at the end of the day, like you need to kind of build that trust over time. So for us, the approach has always been start a bit more centralized and decentralize progressively, which is how we've been thinking about it. And it's worked really well for us. I think the other element for us, and similar to what Safari's done, and I think Jump has done, and a lot of the best communities that I'm a part of, at least, generally speaking, it is a bit more curated, right? I think that's what everyone's searching for. Is the other issues with DAOs and particularly Discord and Web3 is like so many of these things are just they're too many people, right? So it's just chaos, it's noise, you don't know who's who. So for us, it's really been about, picking the best of the best, which is why we have a pretty extensive vetting process for anyone who goes on a website. You have to basically fill out like a 20-question application, which is essentially like an interview just in type form. So you have to tell us everything about yourself. You have to dox yourself. You have to go through multiple interviews just to even get in. But in the end, I think it benefits all of us because now by the time someone gets through the door, you trust that this person is high quality, right? And then we have other mechanisms we're building / are already built where we're actually tracking people, even when they're within the community, creating reputation scores for marketers, because then there's something really exciting you can unlock, right? Where you can eventually start to say, well, of our community.
Will this be saleable? Will you be bringing this to market?
It's all going to come eventually. Yeah, it's a matter of how quickly we can build it and get it out, right? Because I think what we're trying to build is the new model for, I think DAOs have a lot of use cases, right? I think in the beginning, we're talking about like protocol DAOs like Uniswap and others like that. Then there's investment DAOs, which I think makes a lot of sense. I think service DAOs is a very untapped space right now. And to be frank, we're one of the few that are really building and scaling in that space sustainably, in my opinion. And so I think we're just trying to figure out what is the right model. We're trying to productize ourselves. And then, eventually I think every agency in the world should be run this way, simply because the economic structure and the way it works just makes way more sense. So it's been a fun time. We're figuring it out and we're growing. So it's been fun.
I know there was a pivot not too long ago, right? Where like a lot of communities who originally wanted to build DAOs ended up saying DAOs are hard. Let's build DAO tooling. And like DAO infrastructure became the play.
Building the ecosystem takes a lot longer than you might think. So I think in the same way that people are building Web3 ad tech when there is no paid media in Web3 and there's no real, it like barely exists. So I think people get really excited. The obvious thing is to build the Web3 parallel for what already exists in Web2. Yeah. But building all that takes time, right? So in the same way that we have ad networks and we don't have a lot of ads, I think a lot of people are building DAO tooling for, as someone who lives and breathes DAOs all day, there just simply aren't enough DAOs, in my opinion, that are revenue generating, that are making money, that are scaling, that it makes sense for DAO tooling to really exist as a market, right? Because from a venture perspective, you always need to think about what is the size of this market. And right now, the markets are too damn small. They're just not, they will be big, but it's probably like 3 to 5 years out, not today. Yeah.
I think it goes back to your pipe metaphor from earlier, right? I think that's an excellent one. It's the same thing we're seeing. But we're definitely in this like skeuomorphic era, right? Yeah. Where like everyone's kind of design thinking for Web3 is just based on what we saw in Web2. Yeah. And that's not necessarily totally wrong. And it's just a natural place for where we started.
Back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But there's going to be this massive leap forward where we suddenly realize what the Web3 native version of everything in Web3 is, right? I love it. I think ads are a great example, right? Like to ads mean interstitials, they mean banners, they mean pop-ups. The truth, that's skeuomorphic. That's like, right? We're going to be entirely Web3 native ads that are totally different and shift our paradigms. But until we get there, we don't know.
My bet is, keeping on growth, right? Like my bet is, I think we're still going to see the skeuomorphic ads for quite a while, only because for us to have truly Web3 native ad units, we need more Web3 users, right? So I think it's like the order of operations is we need to onboard a lot more people into the space before we even start talking about how that evolves. Because again, if 99% of the world is here, traditional paid media and traditional tactics and cookie tracking, even though cookies are being deprecated and it's getting worse and worse, it's still highly relevant, right? So I think for the next 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years, it's still going to be this very weird kind of hybrid stitching, right? Of how do you connect wallets with emails and how do you track people and how do you create better systems?
Right.
Yeah. And then I think, but in the end, yes, we will eventually get to these more native units. But I think the question then becomes like, where do you even, people talk about metaverse, right? Like AR isn't even fully real yet. There was an article that just came out, right? Apple's going to release their AR headset. It's apparently going to be like $3,000. I don't know who, so definitely not for the mass consumer, right? And even Apple is having doubts. So metaverse as a mainstream adoption moment probably still isn't going to happen when Apple comes out with that. So
no, it's a great point. I think for the next X number of years, I would say maybe I'm a little bit more bullish than you are. I wouldn't quite say 5, but maybe it's
maybe 5's a bit
1.5 to 3 years. Yeah. The vast majority of Web3 growth team ad spend will be deployed to Web2 ad networks to convert, right? To buy Web2 users and turn them into Web3 because that pool is so small. What I would say though is I think we saw the industry's first pass at a Web3 native ad unit, and it failed. But I would say airdrops. These kind of like naked airdrops, right? Like where you go into OpenSea and it's like, oh shoot, I have like 4 scammy looking airdrops that I didn't buy. That I would almost say, right? That's like
that is advertising. That's 100%.
Yeah, they didn't work great, and so I think we'll see them fall out. But it was a good attempt, a non-skeuomorphic attempt at Web3 advertising.
I think, and that's where I think we're in such a primitive phase right now, right? Like the fact that, and there's something, we had a conversation with the team at Disco. Their whole point of view is not everything on the internet needs or should be, or even legally should be on chain, which is true, right? Because if you really think about Web3 adoption, if we really believe this is the future of the internet, there's a lot of things on the internet that I don't want on chain forever, right? Like whether it's Web3 social, right? Do I need my grandchild to see on the blockchain that Blake, said something stupid on the internet when he was, however many years old? Or do I want my health data or the fact that, for my DeFi transactions, if anyone has my wallet address, they could just go into that wallet and see every single thing that I've ever done.
That's a great point.
That's crazy. So I think that's the issue with it, and why airdrops probably didn't work is, well, I mean, that and many other reasons, right? But it's like, because everything's so public, there's a positive to that. Obviously, it's transparent, it's immutable and whatnot, but there probably is a balance for this thing to get to mainstream adoption and to the point where also like airdrops, how do you even trust that it's a legitimate airdrop, that it's not a scam? So probably there need to be these layers built in between where it's like either airdrop vetting sitch or I don't know, but we'll figure it out. It's all going to come in the end. So we didn't get there.
Yeah. As you mentioned kind of that like immutability around some of these things for forever and ever. This is where I always get a little bit squirrely around like soulbound tokens, right? Non-tradable NFTs. And I think about them almost like tattoos, right? Because like if you choose to mint a soulbound into your wallet, you truly cannot ever get it out of your wallet. All right. And so like, let's say I were to mint some soulbound for like Taylor Swift, because I'm really into Taylor Swift now. But like, 40 years from now, if I hate Taylor Swift, that's still a part of my wallet. It's like getting a dumb tattoo on my face.
That's
right.
A digital tattoo.
It is, right? And if we believe wallets will become as core to our day-to-day functions as they really will be. So
one thing that Evan mentioned too is like if you have beef with someone and you want to spam the F out of them and like you just airdrop like hundreds, like we get a few here and there as we were mentioning, but like hundreds, thousands, and just make it super annoying and time consuming and tedious for them to have to remove that.
It's just like with email, we need spam filters. We need, ways to.
That's what I was thinking of when you were talking about the airdrop. I'm like, I view that whenever I open my OpenSea and I see those. I'm like, to me, it's like a newsletter that I didn't subscribe to, or a spam email from like
it's exactly
some
what
local,
it is. It's bad advertising. You're right.
You know what needs to be built? A way for users to have a trusted source for, unsubscribe, but also a trusted way to vet and understand when someone airdrops them something that is legit. It's almost like someone's thinking about that, but we can talk about that later. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I wonder who. So I know we only have like 10, 15 minutes left. So we actually had some listener generated questions. So I'm going to skip to some of those because I think those are kind of juicy and would love your take on it, because they're very much like gaming related. I'll just jump right into it. So Quinn, what legacy gaming brands do you think are best positioned to enter Web3?
It's a really interesting question. I'm going to give an unfortunate answer. None of the big name gaming brands have I seen anything really, really exciting from, sadly. It's a lot of these smaller studios, right, who like are building things that then get published under other names or have built really awesome games like in niches on Steam. These are the ones who like we have super interesting conversations with like almost every day. And we've spoken to, I'm not exaggerating, a couple hundred studios, right? Wow. Very recently. All Web2 who want to start now exploring Web3 and are looking for, the right partner and the right network. And it's so cool what they're bringing, right? Because these are like proven, serious, brilliant game designers. And all they want to do is build a game. And then, we and the rest of the Web3 community can teach them how to add new Web3 mechanics and bring token economies inside of it. That's what I'm most bullish on, to be honest.
What do you think about Just building on that, I mean, just a big name that just announced, right? So Square Enix, Final Fantasy, and that whole crew, I think they announced pretty recently that they're doing some stuff with Polygon. Your hot take? I don't know. Is it a bunch of PR fluff? You think there's something real there?
It's hard to say.
I don't know. Yeah,
it's hard to say. It is always hard to say. I'm very bullish actually on Polygon's partnership team. I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm super impressed by them. One of them, actually, her name's Ryan. She even spent some time with us at Sky Mavis. She's badass. Nice. So I do believe in that sense. Polygon's impressive as well. But yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see kind of what actually gets delivered there.
I love it.
Yeah. On that, do you which blockchain do you think will take over the Web3 gaming industry? Polygon?
Oh, I have to say Ronin. Yeah, I have to say Ronin.
Yeah.
There we go.
Any secondaries you want to put out there?
Oh man, I think we're still too early to pick a secondary racehorse. Yeah. But I'll tell you why I'm bullish on Ronin. We just fortunately, right? We've aggregated the highest demand for Web3 gaming on any chain, right? DAA, daily active addresses. We still have the highest at this point, even at the kind of trough of the bear here. And all of them have only ever had one game to play for like 4 years now. Right. And so as we start deploying more games on this, right, it's our belief that we'll acquire even more addresses looking for more games. And it just kind of turns into a flywheel from there. Blake, I cut you off, man. I'm sorry.
No. I was actually literally just about to ask that, which is like, well, let's talk about Ronin and like what you guys are doing. So I would actually like to dig a bit deeper into like the games you guys are coming out with. I don't know if you can announce them now or on a high level at least, like what types of games are you guys moving towards? Where do you see the future? And I'd also would love to dig into, obviously, like play to earn was where it all started. It's evolved rapidly since then. Is there a new term? How do we think about it? We'll love to touch on that very quickly as well.
There's a number of different games that are out now. Things like the Machines Arena by Directive, right? Which we're super, super pumped about. It's actually live in early access now. Nice. And like, it's so different, right? It's like, it's like a battle arena game, right? You can play with a team of 4. And it's a third person shooter, right? So like, so different than Axie. What I love about this is like, there are it's badass. Yeah. And there are hardcore Web3 gamers out there who don't have a Ronin wallet, have never come to Ronin Network. They only exist within like the Immutable ecosystem or the Polygon ecosystem. And they're playing their games there and they're good games there. But like, why have they never come to Ronin? Well, like we only have one game and like, it's a trading card game with like a very, in my opinion, beautiful, but very unique art style. And like for better or for worse, maybe those hardcore gamers don't like trading card games. Yeah, and that's fine. But now we have games like Machinery, right? So like they can come over and play this, right? On the flip side, we've got like an Axie Match 3 coming out now, which we're excited to see what that does on the more mass market side of things. We've got this game Tribes, which we're building entirely with the community, and there's more as well, which have kind of come out in this recent announcement. But I'm so pumped on this like ecosystem expansion that has just occurred.
I'm really pumped, man. That makes a lot of sense. I think that's the interesting thing too, is when we talk about games, we always kind of just classify it under games. And I think it's the same thing like we talked about with DAOs, right? There are many types of DAOs, there are many demographics, many people. And I think it's the same thing with games. It's like Axies for one group, there's shooters, there's all types, strategy, all that. Yeah.
Bingo. I think the other thing I'm trying to like, it's my personal crusade to kind of shift the market on is like when we say like a gamer, everyone just goes to like an 18-year-old kid in their mom's basement, like playing COD zombies, right? But like, right? Like if I asked my mom, like, are you a gamer? She'd say no. If I asked her, are you a TV watcher? She'd say yeah. But my mom plays Match 3. Like she is a gamer. Yeah. But it's just like this term has come to mean a very niche thing. And like, I want people to be more comfortable saying like, yeah, I'm a gamer. And then when we do that, all of us will start to realize like, holy cow, like the market size for gamers on this planet is absolutely massive. Right. Yeah. And so that's kind of why I'm so bullish on it on the whole.
That's so interesting. I never thought about it that way. Yeah. It's like the term gaming or gamer needs like a PR push or something.
It does. A rehabilitation.
We also need, I think, I'm really excited. I mean, it's early days, right? But like Web3 mobile gaming, right? Like only because the mobile gaming market is gigantic, right? If we're talking just like regular iPhone apps, right? And all that to say, I mean, we're still so early. We've barely figured out like desktop native, let alone mobile. But that's the next.
It's coming.
That's
though,
the
definitely.
next frontier. Yeah.
That's right.
It's coming.
That's right.
One step at a time.
Yeah. And when we talk about turning, sorry, Julie, when we talk about turning active users into active addresses, mobile will be the biggest push for it because that's where the most.
It'd be huge. Yeah. It's right there. It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always right here too. I'm curious, the last question I'll ask, and then I think we can get into rapid fire, just being like cognizant of time. But in terms of like trends within the gaming industry development, especially like with Web3 gaming, is there certain regions within the world that you're seeing this progress more so than others? I mean, you're based in Asia, so I'm imagining, countries within Asia are kind of leading the charge there. But curious to hear what you're seeing across the world. What country do you think is best positioned to lead Web3 gaming in general?
Definitely it's Vietnam. Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, where I am now. It's Sky Mavis' capital. It's kind of become the like quasi capital of Web3 gaming, and it's so impressive kind of what's happened here. So there's incredible talent here. I don't know if you guys remember the game Flappy Bird from way back when we were growing up. Yeah. So Flappy
One
Bird,
of the OG
was
iPhone games, by the way.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And it was built by a Vietnamese game dev. And so, before he shipped, there was really no kind of game dev ecosystem here. And then after he shipped, all the great engineering talent here said, holy cow, if he can do it, I can do it. And they ended up building an incredible game dev ecosystem here. That powerful ecosystem has now quickly shifted into Web3. And so there's just so much talent. There's meetups all the time, and I'm always just shocked by what people are building.
On the cutting edge, man. Julie, should we go into rapid fire? What do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Yeah, sure. So as mentioned, we'll ask, I think it's 4 questions we have. We'll ask them, answer first thing that comes to mind as quickly as possible. And we'll keep it moving. So first question, what Web3 project, not including your own, Sky Mavis, Axie, anything else, that you're most bullish on?
Okay, I'll give you 3. Superfine, really awesome growth tool that's being built right now. Safari, I just love everything that Justin is doing. And a project called Tribally, Tribally. They're building kind of community analytics analogous to traditional product analytics like Amplitude or Mixpanel. And what they want to deliver is like a community user journey. And community aha moments, which I've never seen before. So I'm so bullish on what they're trying to deliver.
Ooh, I love that. Check that one out.
Yeah, I'm looking that up and throwing that in the product channel.
Noting, I heard you typing.
Always more.
Okay, second one's my favorite. Biggest professional learning from 2022. And maybe, I guess, early on 2023.
It was absolutely trying to ship the first iteration of our Axie creator program. We spent like 4 months doing it. We interviewed all of the commanding heights of the Web2 gaming creator programs, thought we had something beautiful, shipped it, and our community and our creators hated it. And hated it.
What was it?
I'm talking like,
why it
was 2 things.
Yeah.
One, we built it entirely without talking to them about it, which is very Web 2, but like in Web 3, as I look back on it now, I'm like, how could I be so hubris?
Right.
And that was a huge learning for me. Absolutely huge. And then 2, the structure of kind of how we wanted to provide them payments. Everyone in Web 2 told us, you got to pay your creators, just kind of buck up, pay your creators, give them a path to sustainability. So we designed this whole system to allow them to get payments. And it ended up looking like a tax on the community. And so it didn't quite work. The incredible thing is we rebuilt it. We did like over 100 hours of one-on-ones and got in bed with them, built it together. Found out none of them even wanted to be paid, which was an incredible Web3 realization. Okay. They wanted access. They just wanted access and recognition. Like, how beautiful is that? They're like, we're in this together. Yeah. And we have over 2,500 creators now in it. I never would have seen anything like this. But that whole journey was just a hell of a set of learnings.
That's absolutely
so interesting. I feel like that loops back to, not to divert the rapid cues, but the pipe and / water analogy that we were talking about, and like Blake mentioning, it's just too early to build some of these like DAO toolings. Like there's just not enough people, and the skeuomorphic stuff. Like basically, I feel like the overall lesson or learning here, or concept, I guess, is like we should wait for people to come in, play around, see how they like using, those Web3 tech or these communities, this DAO structure, and then build based on that, like build based on human behaviors within Web3 versus be going too far the skeuomorphic route and assuming that people are going to want the same thing in Web3 as they do in Web2. So I feel like there's just like this common theme with what we're discussing around that and like this learning that you just mentioned.
I sometimes talk to people building Web3 growth tech projects, and the feeling is like, that's really cool what you built, and it definitely solves for the gap you're trying to solve for. But like that gap, it's not really a pain point. Like, sorry, but I think it goes back, Julie, to exactly that. Like, it's almost just taking the time of actually waiting to see where the people actually have real large scale pain points.
Yeah. When it comes to product development, it's always just, there are a lot of problems, but is this a problem that's, like you said, like a real problem? And is it a problem people are willing to pay for at the end of the day if you're trying to build a business? Right?
Yeah. Let's build up the complaints and then we'll solve for the complaints before, but assuming complaints. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then third one, if you had $1 million, what would you go build in Web3 today?
Okay. Again, two answers. One is the proper answer. One is the dream answer. The proper answer is something in Web3 growth tech. I'm just becoming more and more obsessed with this space, and I think it would be so much fun to just go all in and build. Cool. That's one. The kind of wildest dream answer. I don't know if you guys follow Balaji Srinivasan, I think is his last name.
Balaji,
on Twitter. He's got this $1 million Bitcoin bet USD
marketing budget. It's marketing budget. I'm saying. Yeah.
But even before that, for like the last maybe 2 years now, I feel like this guy has been like my Martin Luther. Everything he says is just canon. And he wrote this book called The Network State, which is awesome. Yeah. And he pitches this idea of a startup society. And, the long and the short of it is like, if we can have a startup company, why can't you have a startup society, right? Where you're like building just to optimize for startup company you build, and you're trying to optimize for one unique economic kind of benefit and prove it or don't, and then capitalize on it. If you do, why can't you do something similar kind of in society? It's a wild idea, but if I had years and plenty of money, I would try to crack the code on startup societies for biology. That
would be sick. I mean, there are definitely people trying to do it. I think most of the people trying to do it are not as sophisticated and have not put together as much thinking. So I think that's the difference. Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah.
But maybe you can do it. Let's see. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Blake.
And then last one, what are your craziest predictions in Web3 for end of this year?
Whoa, that's a really cool one. Craziest predictions for Web3 by end of 2023. So sadly, I don't think we're out of the bear yet, but I think that's a beautiful thing because it gives all of us the space to just keep building. I think we're going to start to see some more really, really cool games, kind of AAA level titles. And I think most growth teams are going to crack the code, or at least start to crack the code on this kind of existential crisis we talked about. What are some of the delightful experiences, like you mentioned, Blake, that actually let us mint active users into active addresses? I think those are things I'm really excited about.
It's all being built. I can tell you, we're talking to people. You're talking to people. We're all trying to tackle that problem as we speak. Yeah,
I'm going to need an offline deep Myosin sync to learn what you guys are really working on there.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We have some documentation coming up. There's a lot of exciting things cooking in the background over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, we'll talk more about it for sure.
Really cool.
I love it.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Julie.
Oh, I was just going to wrap it up. First of all, thank you, Quinn, so much for coming on. It was truly a pleasure. I love that we kind of got to like turn the mic around on us for a little bit and let Blake speak all things Myosin as well. And it was great learning about Sky Mavis and Axie. Want to give you the chance to shill yourself. Let our listeners or viewers know where they can find you, where they can find Sky Mavis, anything else that you're working on across any and all channels.
Awesome. I think top 2 spots, Ronin Network on Twitter. That's kind of what we're most excited about at the moment. And on Twitter, I am Smooch _Axie, SMOOCH_Axie.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. Truly a pleasure. Especially, I know it's late over where you're at. So appreciate you hopping on. And we'll have to set up a follow-up deep dive, private deep dive offline.
Are you going to be at NFT NYC or Consensus? I don't know if either of those make sense for you, but yeah.
Possibly Consensus, probably not NFT NYC.
Okay. Keep me posted on Consensus because we're doing some fun stuff there as well. So we'll talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah. Will do. Guys, this was a blast. Thanks so much for hosting.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. This is a great time. And excited to keep chatting.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of W3G. If you'd like to learn more about Web3 marketing, head over to myosin.xyz to get started. And of course, if you're a fan of the show, please be sure to show us your support by subscribing and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever platform you're using to tune in. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.